नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय तले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्णा चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र शत शिष्यमत हिज डिवाइन कृष्ण एसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र शत शिष्यमत हिज डिवाइन कृष्ण भक्त सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय नाम आचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहिए श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि श्री गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय श्री क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी महारानी की जय समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Ranga Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Thank you so much, Shucharu Deva Prabhu, and thank you, Tulsi Priya, for the Vrindavan Mangal Arti screen share. And welcome to everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Wednesday, February 14th, 2024 in New York. And tonight we are starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 28th chapter, verse number 20. Kapila Deva is speaking to Mother Devahuti. So glad Maharaj could be with us this evening. Hare Krishna. Or this morning for him. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll start us off and then we'll trade off later on. So 3:28:20. I'll try to post it here. Oh, thank you, Chelsea Priya. Thank you very much. Tasmil labda padang chittam sarva yava sangstitam Vilaksya katra sangyujyad ange bhagavato munihi. In fixing his mind on the eternal form of the Lord, the yogi should not take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord. Purport: the word muni is very significant. Muni means one who is very expert in mental speculation or in thinking, feeling, and willing. He is not mentioned here as a devotee or a yogi. Those who try to meditate on the form of the Lord are called munis, or less intelligent, whereas those who render actual service to the Lord are called bhakti yogis. The thought process described below is for the education of the muni. In order to convince the yogi that the absolute truth or supreme personality of Godhead is never impersonal at any time, the following verses prescribe observing the Lord in his personal form, limb after limb. To think of the Lord as a whole may sometimes be impersonal. Therefore, it is recommended here that one first think of his lotus feet, then his ankles, then the thighs, then the waist, then the chest, then the neck, then the face, and so on. One should begin from the lotus feet and gradually rise to the upper limbs of the transcendental body of the Lord. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitams Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshvari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Ange Bhagavato Munihi, Kapila Dev calls this person, he's giving instructions to the Muni or the sage. And interestingly, Prabhupada says those who try to meditate on the form of the Lord are called munis or less intelligent. Typically, we hear muni translated as a thoughtful person or inquisitive sage, not generally less intelligent. But Kapila Dev is directing his comments here to the muni, to the sage, the thoughtful person who's meditating on the form of the Lord, and giving him very pertinent instructions how to do so, not to see the Lord or try to see the Lord as the whole form, but as we'll read in subsequent verses, there's a list of the various parts, his various limbs, one after another, and the qualities that we pray to them for. There's some nice commentary coming up there. Yes, so Hare Krishna, and hoping Maharaj would be willing to speak to us on this verse if he so chooses.
Well, the Prabhupada's focus is, maybe you can get rid of these slides. Prabhupada's focus is on the personality of Godhead, as always. The yogi is being encouraged to meditate limb by limb, just to get off of the platform of the impersonal conception, the way gone impersonal. No, these. Yeah, look. The impersonal conception, the way gone impersonal conception is that there's just a nothingness or a light or something like that. But then you come to a sort of impersonal conception where there's a form, but it's just a symbol. It's not really a person, it's just a symbolic representation of Brahma. But so the yogi is being encouraged to start at the lotus feet of the Lord and concentrate on these features of the Lord, the bodily limbs of the Lord, one by one, to purify his consciousness and to gradually rise to a genuine personal conception. And the devotees are supposed to be beyond either of these modes of thinking, certainly beyond the aspiring for a light or an impersonal homogeneous oneness, and also not seeing the form of the personality of Godhead as a mere symbol or a representation of something higher. So the devotee is, so this is particularly, this practice is particularly prescribed for the yogis, although the devotees also are encouraged to think of all the various features of the Lord, starting from the Lord's lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Jai Maharaj, thank you so much. I happened to notice in the purport to Bhagavatam 1.8.23, where Prabhupada is speaking on the prayers of Queen Kunti and how she approached the Lord at that time. And he says he says about Kunti Devi that that one should not try to look at the face of the Lord without being accustomed to seeing the lotus feet of the Lord. Srimati Kunti, because of her being the aunt of the Lord, did not begin to see the Lord from the lotus feet because the Lord might feel ashamed. And thus Kunti Devi, just to save a painful situation for the Lord, began to see the Lord just above his lotus feet, that is, from the waist of the Lord, gradually rising to the face, and then down to the lotus feet. In the round, everything there is in order. Any other comments or questions on this verse? If not, then Tulsi Priya, please go ahead and read text 21, unless there's anything you had to say, Maharaj, in addition.
No.
All right, thank you.
I just I took that part about seeing the Lord as a whole, as impersonalism. At first it pulled me up short, and then I was wondering, well, it's kind of like multitasking. When you try to do so many things at once, you don't really get anything done very well, and nobody can really think of more than one thing at a time. So you should focus on one thing, and that should be the Lord's lotus feet. But that may be not a good interpretation, but that's what occurred to me. I will read the next verse. Text 21. Sanchintayed bhagavatas charanadavindam vajran kusha tvaja saruruha ranchanadhyam utungarakta vilasannakha chakravala jyotsnabhir anhata mahadhridayan dakaram. Translation. The devotee should first concentrate his mind on the Lord's lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of a thunderbolt, a goad, a banner, and a lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nails resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart. Purport. The Mayavadi says that because one is unable to fix his mind on the impersonal existence of the absolute truth, one can imagine any form he likes and fix his mind on that imaginary form. But such a process is not recommended here. Imagination is always imagination, and it results only in further imagination. A concrete description of the eternal form of the Lord is given here. The Lord's soul is depicted with distinctive lines resembling a thunderbolt, a flag, a lotus flower, and a goad. The luster of his toenails, which are brilliantly prominent, resembles the light of the moon. If a yogi looks upon the marks of the Lord's soul and on the blazing brilliance of his nails, then he can be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. This liberation is not achieved by mental speculation, but by seeing the light emanating from the lustrous toenails of the Lord. In other words, one has to fix his mind first on the lotus feet of the Lord if he wants to be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this idea of imagining a form and fixing the mind on that imaginary form, that's very prevalent. You see things like that in lots of popular, yoga literatures. I remember when the book Eat, Pray, Love came out, a lot of people were raving about it, and I checked it out to see what it was. And there was some prayer that the protagonist of the book, she couldn't surrender her heart to it. And so I don't know if somebody told her to do this or if she concocted it on her own, but she started thinking of her nephew. And because she had love for her nephew, she would think about her nephew while she was chanting the prayer. And that love somehow became translated into the prayer. But really all she was doing was thinking of her nephew. And she couldn't accept the prayer on its own terms and surrender to that. So in a similar way, people are thinking all the time that they can just imagine something because that's what they're already surrendered to. And the idea is that we're supposed to surrender to the Supreme Lord, not to our imaginations. So the idea of imagining something, we can learn from our attachments. We can learn from an attachment. We have an attachment. It's like Bilvamangala Thakur. He went to so much trouble to see the prostitute. And she said, if you had if you had any devotion, if you directed your devotion to me towards, the Lord, you'd be in a lot better place. So that attachment, he was able to understand, but it's not that by, having an infatuation with a prostitute, he's able to develop an attachment for the Supreme Lord. No, he had to transfer it from the prostitute to the Lord. So I think that's it. I don't have much to say about the Lord's toenails. They must be incredibly gorgeous. And comparing it to the light of the moon, that's, the moon is probably one of the more beautiful objects we see in this material world. And so if just the Lord's toenails have a resemblance, or the moon has a resemblance to the Lord's toenails, then we can't imagine how much more beautiful they are and how the totality of the Lord's beauty is. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Tulsi Priya. Maharaj, would you care to comment on this verse and purport?
There's some nice words here. Sanchintayate. One should fully concentrate. Sanchintayate. Bhagavata, on the personality of Godhead. Charanada Vindam, on the lotus feet of the Lord. The Patanchidho Nadrata Yushmadangriya. My bodies fall down because of neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord. Prabhupada, one time Satsrup Maharaj related that Prabhupada said, because they've neglected your lotus feet. Feet means person. So again, that theme. And here it's very specific. The lotus feet of the Lord have lanchita, specific lanchana, specific marks of that Chakravarti Thakur describes the very specific marks on the lotus feet of the Lord. So one is advised to think about that. The Vajra, Ankusha, Dwaja, the thunderbolt, the elephant goad, a flag, Suroruha, lotus. And we hear how devotees are in ecstasy because they see when they see in Vrindavan Krishna's footprints with these very specific features. Even no one wants to walk on them. Just preserve the lotus footprints of Krishna. Adhyam, they're adorned with all of these marks. And then his nails are described. The vilasat, rakta vilasat, they're reddish. The women paint their nails reddish. Maybe some men these days too. I don't know what's going on. But the Krishna's toenails have a natural reddish luster, presumably not gross and like red nail paint, but a beautiful reddish hue, which are and the effulgence of those nails is described as Chakravala Yotsna Bhi, like the moon rays. The moon rays are not gross; they're subtle and subtly effulgent. The sun itself is what should we say? Can be scorching. It's piercing, but the moonlight is diffused, a diffused, pleasant kind of effulgence, and that's the comparison given to the effulgence from Krishna's nails, a beautiful kind of soft effulgence, which ahata mahat hridaya andakar. Hridaya andakar means the darkness in the heart. Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Andakar, the darkness of Maya in the heart, or elsewhere, Hridaya Daurbalyam, the weakness of heart, darkness in the heart, junk in the heart, Chaito Darpada Marjanam. We're trying to cleanse the heart because of all this andakar, just darkness. In the translation, the word gloom is used, and we can think in modern context how depression is so prominent. The heart is not only full of nasty and unwanted things, but it becomes depressed. Everything is so bleak, everything is so dark. People are suicidal, people are taking antidepressants like anything. Just their heart is gloomy. It's a dark place. And that's, when you come to a dirty place, that's what it's like. When if there's a room or a house or a bathroom or anything that's just become dirty, and it's like an atmosphere where yeah, it's just overtaken by ignorance. So the heart is like that. It's just covered. Avaranatmika Shakti. It's covered by ignorance. And Hridaya Andhakar, so the heart consciousness. But that's dispelled by meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna. People are trying this, trying that, or else not. They're just satisfied being in darkness. They think that darkness, what is that? Yana Shah Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami Tasyam Jagrati Bhutani Sanasha Pashato Mye. They're backwards. They think that darkness is light. We were in some house where the lighting was poor. It seemed like Praveen Krishna commented, it was like barroom lighting. When you go to casinos and bar rooms and various other places, I don't usually go. The lighting apparently is dark. Casino, we went through a casino in Atlantic City in Rathiatra because that's where the bathrooms were. And it's all kept in darkness deliberately. So there's no day or night. There's nothing to intrude on your obsession with the mode of ignorance. So Krishna's lotus feet are the bring illumination to the heart, dispelling darkness. Okay, I think that's what I would say.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Devi's child has a question. He says, Hare Krishna, isn't the deity of the Lord also the body of the Lord after consecration? If true, then aren't we already seeing and concentrating on the whole body of Krishna when we look at the deities?
Yes, this is easy. We have the easy, Prabhupada mentioned in a previous purport that for all of the items prescribed for the yogis, we have a corresponding item in the Bhakti Yoga system. So this is our method. They have to somehow, first they have to go off and do to a sacred place and do all of these preliminary methods of discipline for practicing yoga and concentrate the mind within, and then try to see somehow or other, try to focus on these features of the Lord, his feet, and one by one, because it's hard. This is hard work to focus the mind like that. The mind is fickle. It wants to go here and there, and to focus the mind on anything in this age is difficult. The meditational process is so hard. But here's our easy process. Just come to the temple and see the beautiful form of Krishna. You don't have to be, of course, if you're a yogi or a highly advanced devotee, you don't need to come to the temple because you'll see Krishna always within the heart. Hridayeshu Bilokayanti. But for the rest of us, this is the opportunity. We can come to the temple, we can see the form of the Lord, we can meditate without having to undergo all these rigorous methods. We can just appreciate how beautiful is Krishna, beautifully dressed, and with his lotus feet and Srimati Radharani garlands and beautiful dress, paraphernalia, cows. All of these things are easily available for the bhakti yogi. Yeah, a good point.
Jai. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Tulsi Priya says, this is not something I think about much these days, but as a newcomer, The idea of being focused on the Lord's lotus feet was strange to me. It seemed very Eastern, especially the lotus part, and it was hard to wrap my mind around the idea. Worshipping his lotus feet, taking shelter of his feet. In Western culture, we would say we take shelter of someone's arms or worship the person. I guess it's still a little alien to me. Early conditioning is still lingering, I suppose.
Yeah, these are cultural features. Even in sometimes the commentators will refer to Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, for example. He's not even referred to it by his name, but by his feet. Srila Rupa Goswami Pad comments. So it's cultural. We're not accustomed to doing that in English. In the English language, these are not among our conventions. We have other conventions that we don't even think of that we use routinely. Nothing comes to mind right away, but stuff that everyone understands, by which we refer to something in some indirect way. But this is built into the Vedic language, the conception of the feet as being, the conception of humility, first of all, even touching someone's feet. It's so alien to Western culture. And even touching the feet of the guru, it's like, am I going to do this? It's like a very big leap for a person in Western culture. Whereas in Indian culture, every day one touches the feet of one's parents, superiors, in cultured families at least, or perhaps in villages still. I don't know about the ordinary city Wallace, but this is the tradition. Yudhishthira Maharaj would every day offer his respect to the superiors, his superiors, and that's how it's done, by touching the feet of the superiors and offering praise. I think it was Tom Hopkins, one academic, I think Tom Hopkins, mentioned that in translating Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada wasn't just translating a text in literal terms, but he was translating a whole culture. When you translate a text, there's terminology built in there that is understood by the readers according to the culture in which the text is rooted. So there's so many things that are just routinely referred to, but and everyone understands what they mean. But Prabhupada had to bring in the whole cultural background, the whole business. We speak about low-born, for example, and in the West now, low-born is not really understood. Low-born is not really understood. We have terms of, we have our own terminology, but that's something that's just not there. Prescribed duty. It's just like a foreign idea. So many holy places even are a little bit understood, but not as built in as they would be in for a follower of the Vedic culture. So Prabhupada was even the deities. You make a reference to the deity and everybody understands, Srimurti or something like that. Everyone understands it. But Prabhupada has Srimurti, to translate it and just say Srimurti or the image or the idol or the deity. It doesn't really convey anything to the reader unless you provide the whole context that the deity is the form of the Lord as represented in the temple. He's understood to be non-different from Krishna or God in his original form. The form is considered spiritual. It's never considered material. All of these things are cultural background that need to be imported, need to be explained, need to be transplanted into the frame of reference of the reader. The academic doesn't do that. He just knows that Srimurti means the image, the venerated image, or something like that. So he has an ABCD approach. He's just translates the words and perhaps with some cultural footnotes. But Prabhupada had that aspiration of translating not only the literal text of Srimad Bhagavatam, but of implanting the entire context into the mind of the reader. So so Hopkins was appreciating that. This was what Prabhupada was doing, and that it's entirely legitimate. It's not that as some scholars criticize Prabhupada for bringing in to his translations or to his purports all of these assumptions from elsewhere, either from other chapters or other books. But that's what you have to do if you want the reader to actually understand the meaning of the text. You can't just leave it at a so-called literal translation. The reader's meant to understand something, and Prabhupada's giving us that understanding with everything associated with it. The entire way of life, sadhana bhakti, bhav bhakti, everything. All right.
Tulsi Priya says, thank you, Maharaj. She goes on, I think there's also a hurdle with accepting gestures of worship and respect toward the feet as literal versus symbolic of humility. Chalk that up to impersonalism, I guess. I have another question I'll ask aloud if I may.
I can say that as a sannyasi, you get all this worship and you get people touching your feet and you get this and that, the other thing. And it's like, even the slightest hint of that makes us uncomfortable with our Western background. And I see that our Indian sannyasis tend to take this more in stride, that it's part of the culture, and we just we know how to reciprocate, how to regard it. We don't get carried off into realms of pride, or else into a sort of incredible discomfort. It's all right. This is what we do. And the same thing, parents are offered respect. If you touch the feet of your parents in America, it's like, what is going on here? But Indian parents understand this is what the child is supposed to do. This is culture. And actually, I've seen that even the Western parents get it. They may actually get it. They may see that this means I'm being respected to a degree to which I'm not accustomed, and I appreciate that. It's there in everyone's Bible. Honor thy father and thy mother. But what does that mean? In the Vedic culture, there's a very particular way that this is done. And I suppose it's there in other cultures also, in different ways. Hare Krishna.
Jai Maharaj, thank you. Tulsi Priya, you had you're going to.
Oh, I should just add one thing, is that it's reciprocated. We offer our respect to our superiors, and the superiors offer blessings. And that's, for a cultured person, this is the importance of this is understood, that I should get blessings of my superiors to do something. Before Duryodhana went off to Kurukshetra, he sought the blessings of Kantari, which we refused to give him. And that wasn't just a trivial thing, that he had to go off to war without the blessings of his mother. Then we read that in the beginning of the Mahabharata war, Arjuna is offering shooting arrows at just touching below the lotus feet of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya, his gurus, asking their blessings. Now I have to fight against you. Please give me your blessings. And the Drona and Bhishma are sending arrows back, just sort of grazing its head. Yes, be blessed. This also tends to be sort of, what should we say, in the modern context, it gets to be a little tediously institutionalized, so that people of an Indian background, they just ask blessings, but without depth to the request. Just sort of can I snap your photo? Can I have your blessings? But it's meant to have depth to it.
Jai Maharaj, thank you. Davy's Child comments that, yes, I've seen some graduation videos from the USA where some Indian students were touching the feet of their teachers. Those teachers were actually surprised and stood wondering what had just happened. And he asks, what is the difference between the body of Krishna made of stone as a deity and the body of Krishna made in one's imagination in the mind? Aren't both examples of one's desire to, I want to say, see the form of Krishna? If we can if we can see the deity as a whole, why can't we see the deity we made in our mind as a whole?
Yeah, the point is valid. There's no difference between the deity in the made in the temple in the form of stone or wood or metal, and the deity in the mind made of mental substance, a subtle matter. They're identical. Krishna in the mind and Krishna in the temple are equally good, just not imagination. Prabhupada makes that point, that imagination is imagination, and from imagination you just get more imagination. So our Krishna, our deity in the mind, is the deity described. Same as in the temple, you can't imagine a deity and make Krishna fourfold bending or standing up straight like a military officer. He has a threefold bending form, and so the Murtiwala, the sculptor, has to craft the form of the deity that way, not by some imaginary method, but as described in the Shastra. So the same thing is true about the deity in the mind. One can't just imagine, but one wants to keep one's mind fixed on the form of Krishna described as described in Shastras, along with his associates, his pastimes, everything. That's okay.
Right. Thank you, Maharaj. And Murray Gupta Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have the tendency to imagine some of the Lord's pastimes as if I were advising a film director depicting the Leela. While solidly based on the textual accounts, there's some imagination in the details of how things might have appeared. Do you see any problem with this?
No. Just like our pujaris, sometimes they'll arrange the flowers this way, sometimes they'll arrange the flowers that way. And you're not going to find in Shastra usually very exact directions about which flowers to put in which order and which way. Sometimes there are, but generally these things are the cloth, which colors and which exact method. But that's up to the pujaris to do by their inspiration. So we have that for the mind also. But then again, sometimes the pujaris would concoct, and then Prabhupada would rebuke them that what is this imagination, what is this concoction? So we want to stay within the boundaries of Shastra, but then we fill in the picture with our own either mental or physical elaboration.
Mari Gupta Prabhu says, thank you, Maharaj. And Saraswati Mata has a comment, and then Tulsi Priya after that. Saraswati Mataji says, pranams. My mother would relish the service in the temple of brushing the dust of the temple floor and putting it on her head to collect the dust of the feet of Vaishnavas that came to the temple. When we were growing up, upon greeting any elders, even if they were strangers, was touching their feet and asking for blessings. Once I had to do this with more than 50 seniors. My back was hurting so much that day.
Yeah.
And Tulsi Priya, please go ahead. You have a hand up.
Hi, Krishna.
Yeah.
When Maharaj was talking about blessings, it reminded me of a pastime. I believe it was either Prabhupada Nectar or Prabhupada Nectar probably. Prabhupada was traveling by train with some of his men, and there were some men in the corridor of the train trying to see Prabhupada, but the servants, as they were entering and leaving the car, they would squeeze out and close the door quickly so that these men couldn't, make contact with Prabhupada and take up his time. And finally, they got eye contact with Prabhupada, so Prabhupada, being polite, invited them in, and he says, so, he looked directly into their faces and asked, so what is it I can do for you? Swamiji, we just wanted to get your blessings. What is that blessing? This answer took them by surprise. No one had ever asked them what kind of blessings. Caught off guard, one of them replied, well, Swamiji, I have this pain in my knee. And then the narrator says, we almost groaned out loud, and the man, becoming embarrassed, hastily added, and for our families too, strike two. And of course, we want to do good to others. As he trailed off into confused silence, Prabhupada indicated his 3 disciples with shaved heads, shikas, kurtas, dhotis, and tulsi beads. He told them, this is my blessing. These boys have given up everything for Krishna's service and to chant Hare Krishna. Are you prepared to accept such a blessing? I think one of them objected that he had to get his daughter married, so they left without the blessings.
Thank you, Tulsi. And Davi's child says, I used imagination because we haven't seen the real form of Krishna yet. So the form we have in our mind and the form we sculpt in the stone is a form which we think as, this might be how Krishna looks, or that might be how Krishna wants us to see him.
Yeah, all good, just within the realm of Shastra. We stay within the boundaries of Shastra. And in that way, you can say imagine. Imagine means, I suppose, some literal dictionary definition means, to form an image in the mind. So in that sense, with that understanding, we imagine or we picture Krishna. But and of course, Prabhupada always objected. Just the word imagination was enough to set him off. But he, so to speak. But the idea is there that I don't think it's objectionable that we have the description of Krishna, and so we put our mind to that, and we try to see what we've heard, and that's what we do. And again, it's that devotion, that mood of devotion also that helps us to have the right picture and to know how to relate to that picture. The Mayavadi may be very good at picturing the form of the Lord, but his understanding is all wrong. But the devotee, even if his picture-making ability is less than perfect, he has the right understanding that this is Krishna. I have to serve him. So I think it's all right.
Right, Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Saraswati Mata comments, I was reading about Prithu Maharaj asking benediction of the service of massaging Lord Vishnu's lotus feet and wanted reassurance from the Lord that Lakshmi, Mother Lakshmi, wouldn't be too upset that he may be encroaching on her service. And Tulsi Priya has another comment. Go ahead.
Maharaj, one thing I noticed, and I see this occasionally when I look at Indian media, like for instance, when the Ram Temple was opened, and they keep using the word idols, and it kind of sets me off because I'm thinking, why can't we use the word murti or archa vigraha or something like that? And it seems like that would be a good activity for devotees to, I don't know how we would do it, but somehow get this idea of idols, because there's so much negativity associated with the word idols. But it
Well,
seems
that's why in India it's not a problem. In our context of Judeo-Christian background, an idol is something that you can't possibly worship because it's so blasphemous and primitive also. Whereas in Indian culture, to speak of the idol of the Lord is not problematic. The word even has a very heavily pejorative. It's very heavily pejorative in biblical contexts and certainly Quranic contexts and so on. But in Hindu contexts, an idol is a murti, is a deity. Prabhupada shows that word deity, but other terms are current in Indian culture. In that context, they're understood, and no one gets. They're understood. So we don't have to be upset that people don't use Prabhupada's terms or ISKCON terms. As long as they have the same understanding, we're happy.
Yeah, Maharaj, thank you. And on that, Davi's Child comments that they use the word murti in Hindi channels. They just use the word idol to make the English-speaking listeners understand, because murti is not a widespread word among English-speaking people. But then Tulsi Priya makes the point that didn't Prabhupada say that the worship of the deity is not, quote, idol worship?
That means not idol worship as you understand idol worship in your Western context. For you, idol worship is a forbidden and blasphemous and primitive and terrible thing. But the Indian doesn't need to be warned in that way. This is not idol worship. Of course, everyone needs to be reminded, even the whatever term we use, that the idol or the deity or the image or the murti is not material. Vishnu, Arche Vishnu Shiladi. We need to be all need to be reminded. Wait a second, the deity is not stone. The spiritual master is not a human being, and so on. The Ganges is not ordinary water. But just as far as the linguistics of it, the terminology of it, the word is not loaded the same way in India that it's loaded in England or America or other such places. So we have the same issues, some of the same issues to deal with, the concept, the tendency to think of the Lord's form as material, but we don't have that extreme pejorative sense surrounding the word idol in India that we find in elsewhere.
Thank you, Maharaj. Davies Child comments, they are not worshiping the idol, they are worshiping the Lord who was asked to reside in that idol. Then it became a murti, he says.
Of course, for us, without getting too deep into it, there was some Indian-Israeli interaction or Hindu-Jewish interaction, which had political ramifications regarding the relationship between India and Israel. And some statement was hammered, they were trying to figure out how they could have some kind of what's the word? Not just amity, but a sort of agreement, a harmony, and the word is escaping me, but anyway, sort of be on the same page about divinity. And of course, the big stumbling block was the idol worship. We don't mind other things, but this idol worship is too much. And so they got around it by the understanding offered by the Indian side that they were not really worshiping this deity as God. It just stands for God. The Mayavadi party was quite comfortable with that, and then the Jewish party, okay, anyway, we'll go into what their ideas are, but they could get along with that. But we're harder to get along with because we insist that the form of the deity is actually non-different from Krishna himself. So there's a Jewish scholar who's written on these topics. Quite a nice ecumenical Jewish scholar, by the way. But and he's academically published the details of some of these conversations. We're out of time.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, we're certainly out of time. Next verse is quite a long purport. So let's see. Krishna Kaunteya Prabhu, would you like to lead us in Kirtan this Wednesday evening?
Yes, well, can I be heard?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmsa Parivraj Jagacharya Astottara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya, Savior of the world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bring say Kaho Sri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar Shivasari, Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna, Gopinath Shamakun, Radhakun, Giridhar Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai Sri Gurung Guranga Gurudas Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Kanteya Prabhu. And thank you, Maharaj, for joining us. And thank you for everything. Thank you, everyone, for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai,
His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Ki Jai.
jai,
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
jai.
Lord,
Jai.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hey,
Thank you, Maharaj.
hope everyone can join us tomorrow for Sri Caitanya-caritamrta. Thanks again for being here. Hare Krishna. Jai Jai.
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Bol.